this week on the Socratic Cinema podcast.
Dude, Ray Fisher's already on you, man. You need to be careful, dude.
Jeez, he's in the room with me right now.
You gave Face Off a 10 out of 10. Mr. Heatherly, are you saying that Sound of Metal is objectively worse than Face Off?
Yeah, because no movie's better than Face Off. So
that is what he said.
I'm putting in my 2 weeks. I'm changing the Socratic Cinema passwords. We've done podcasts about Face Off and The Kissing Booth too.
Both of which are phenomenal films, except for Kissing Booth 2.
Welcome back, beautiful people, to another episode of the Socratic Cinema podcast. My name is Kasey Clark.
I'm Charlie Heatherly.
And I'm James DeLisio.
Yes, and we're back at it again this week. We're on an Oscar roll. We're starting up, people. We're getting ready. So for this week, we're tackling the movie The Sound of Metal. It's a Amazon original, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, let's just jump into starting thoughts. James, I'll go to you first.
I'm on the hot seat. Oh, so wow. So last to introduce myself, but first to give my thoughts. I gotta pick and choose. Jeez, Kasey.
Well, I'm trying to be benevolent and fair. It's Palm Sunday.
Kasey does not lean one way nor another.
Bro, there's going to be a Twitter outrage for your conduct on this podcast, James. We're going to have to suspend you.
I know. I'm sorry. Jeez, call me
This
Joss
seems a bit
Whedon.
pointed. This seems pointed.
Dude, Ray Fisher's already on you, man. You need to be careful, dude.
Jeez,
he's in the room with me right now.
He's taking notes, actually.
He's taking notes.
We hired him as our secretary. He's turned on us.
Mr. Fisher. All right, yeah, no, I can talk about Sound of Metal. I freaking loved Sound of Metal. I knew pretty much nothing about it aside from the fact that it's about a metal drummer who goes deaf. This was such an enjoyable movie to me. I thought it had a really, really great arc, and just the character development of Ruben was really, really nice to see. I thought it offered a lot of very interesting discourse on the deaf community that I wasn't expecting. I feel like I came away educated, and I thought it was really interesting, sort of like seeing this, I guess, conflict in the deaf community that exists about like cochlear implants. Is that how you pronounce that?
Yeah.
Cochlear implants. I thought that was really interesting, and I felt like I learned something from this movie, which I think is always a good thing. I thought I believe it's Riz Ahmed. I thought his performance was incredible in this film. I think I would be inclined to root for him for Best Actor.
Thank you.
I love Chadwick Boseman and Ma Rainey, but this was really good. I don't even know anymore, but that's for the Oscar episode. Anyways, really, really just enjoyable film to me. Very poignant and emotional. And I just, let's appreciate the sound design. I thought the sound of this movie, or lack thereof, was phenomenal.
I was going to make that joke, James.
But like just the ability of this movie to really put you in Ruben's shoes, I thought is great. Like it commits to the whole deaf thing, you know, in a way that's really, really fun. And I feel like I almost spoiled some of it for myself by watching with subtitles on. I think it would have been better just to like fully get into Ruben's shoes. And the ability to put such emotion into your scenes with no dialogue, no sound effects, no music, no nothing is really, really impressive. And I especially the ending scene was just that like, that was a nail in the coffin for me. I'm a positive person. We know I tend to like movies, but I definitely liked this one, I think, better than Minari for sure, if we're keeping track of where we stand in Oscar Town. So out of 10, I gave Minari like a 9, but do you ever have a moment where you realize your metric has been all off?
Yeah. Every time.
Every time. Kasey gives every movie an 8.5 and realizes eventually we're going to have to. They can't all be 8.5.
Anastasia, Minari, the same quality?
Yeah, I guess so.
In my eyes, okay? In my heart.
I don't know. I feel like I'm not very good at giving ratings out of 10, but so I'm just going to give this one a thumbs up. 2 thumbs up. I abstain from out of 10s. I'm not good at it.
Look, Socratic Cinema fam squad, I will not lie to you. All right. I'm not going to cop out like James just did, and I'm not going to mince words. From the films I've seen this year, it is the best one. This deserves to win Best Picture at the Oscars.
Dang, telling it like it is.
I will tell you like it is. This is a 9 out of 10 if there ever was one. I will say that with confidence. I will use that as a political platform. I'm going to run on that for the Democratic ticket. I'm going to say that this movie's a 9 out of 10. Yeah.
I hate to interrupt you, but I don't actually hate to interrupt you that much.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, screw you too.
You gave Face Off a 10 out of 10. Mr. Heatherly, are you saying that Sound of Metal is objectively worse than Face Off?
Yeah, because no movie's better than Face Off. So
that is what he said.
2 weeks. I'm putting in my 2 weeks. I'm changing the Socratic Cinema passwords and not telling any of you guys. Never should have trusted me with all this power, by the way. So,
Damn.
see you guys, and we'll get to Socratic James next week.
Yeah.
And he's the recovery phone number, too.
You take the Twitch account, Charlie.
The recovery email, though. So guess who wins? Guess who wins?
Okay,
I'm still out of the loop, man. Nothing is connected to my name.
Sure jots down another point on his.
I have to ask to open the Canva, y'all.
I know. Ray Fisher's like, oh, this is.
He's like, oh,
more evidence for the case.
Well, so the lawsuit is impending, but before we get into court. Yeah, Sound of Metal, I think, is an easy 9 out of 10. This movie is incredible. And Riz Ahmed, I'm so glad that we're finally seeing how great he is, because he was in Rogue One. He was
he was.
He was great in Rogue One. Yeah, killed it. Besides the fact that Rogue One is, not phenomenal.
And also he got killed in it.
True. I
Spoilers.
believe he was in Night Manager or like Night Hotel or something to that effect, and he was really good in that. I never saw it though. He was on a Hamilton extra song, like a Hamilton mixtape song. He was really good on that. He's a rapper as well, if you guys didn't know. And then now he is absolutely demolishing the game in Sound of Metal.
He forgot his most important credit.
What's his most important credit?
He's in Wuthering With You, right?
He's the bad guy from Venom.
Oh, I didn't see Venom.
He's also voicing Wuthering With You.
He is?
Yeah.
Yeah, he is.
Takai.
James, did we watch that in English?
No, we watched that in Japanese.
Oh, yeah, because we're real fans, Kasey. That's,
you know what?
Charlie and I saw it on a date. That's another story.
We did see it on a date. Yeah, no, I think we've told that Socratic story, but that's actually really cool that he was a voice on Wuthering With You. Thank you, Kasey, for that information. I value
You're
that.
welcome. Thank you. Mm-hmm. I love feeling valued.
Ray Fisher
you hear that, Ray Fisher?
The last point. Okay. We're one step away from getting absolutely terminated. But yeah, this movie is great. You should watch it for all the points that James said. The sound design is great. Riz Ahmed is great. The commentary, I think, is as James said, especially poignant, because like I did not think that there would be this debate in the deaf community about deafness being a disability versus just something that you have. I've always heard that in things like the autism community and the whole spectrum community. If you're on the spectrum, anywhere in there, it's especially when this gets brought up with like CRISPR technology, you get to hear a lot of like, oh, well, this is not a disability. This is just how, some people live, and it should not be fixed because it's not something that needs to. So that was super interesting for me to hear. And I think just generally, this film is just raw and real. The way that Riz Ahmed plays his character, whose name I'm forgetting right now, as I always do, Ruben. The way that Riz Ahmed plays Ruben is just it's so much like how an actual person would react. Like after he gets the diagnosis that he can't hear anything, or after he realizes he can't hear anything, you see how angry and in denial he is all the time. He's edgy. He's like at his wit's end. And that's totally how someone would react in that situation, especially someone with such a close relationship with their ears as a drummer would. It's not this sort of debilitating sorrow. It's this edginess and this anger that's sort of like poking out at all these different moments at different people. The way that he destroys the trailer randomly for no reason, probably because he woke up in the middle of the night, was pacing around, and then just couldn't take it anymore. All that anxiety crept in until it had to explode out somewhere. Like you see these stories within actions that Riz Ahmed does, and it's truly inspiring to see such a actor at the height of his capabilities. Like if we thought that Joaquin Phoenix was, acting as someone who is mentally deranged would, this is Riz Ahmed acting as someone who is, lost his greatest passion in life would. This is, I think, acting at some of its highest potential. So 100% watch it for Riz Ahmed. Chadwick Boseman, I think very quickly I should make my thoughts clear on that because I was like, yeah, go Riz. Chadwick Boseman did a great job as well. I think both of them equally deserve to win Best Actor award. And I think it's sort of pointless to talk about who did it better because both of them played such different characters and both did such a great job. So that's why I don't know how much debate we really need over that. Like both of them are great. I would be fine if either of them won. I prefer Riz Ahmed, but if you prefer Chadwick, then that is an equally great opinion to have. So yeah, those are all my thoughts. Air the room on all the possible controversies.
Yeah, good takes. Good
Yeah,
takes.
wow.
There we go. Going over to Kasey then.
All right. Okay. I really, really like this movie. I was very scared because I was probably if not like the last person to watch it, but in like out of the three of us, I was pretty behind in watching it. So I got some of the commentary and I don't remember who it was, but someone was like, "Ah, dang. This is kind of like uncomfortable." And I was like, "Please not again. I don't know if I can do another."
Whiplash
Like,
PTSD.
I don't know if I
Literally,
can do
why are
it.
all of these drumming movies so anxiety inducing?
Wait, I wouldn't describe this movie as anxiety inducing.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
What? You guys are
Yeah,
Which
Charlie, you
was-
suck. I'm sorry,
which
that was a little
I-
that was a little
Is
much.
it not anxiety inducing to lose your sense of hearing? Like losing one of your senses is like one of my biggest like things
For
in my
sure.
brain.
Yeah.
Counterpoint, why would you guys all go silent when I say Charlie, you suck? That just made it really
Ray
awkward.
Fisher, this is for me now. The lawsuit's for me. I'm gonna hand in my 2 weeks.
Like, what's the actor of Superman's name? Joke ruined, but that
Henry
guy's with
Henry
Charlie.
Cavill.
Yeah, that dude. He's with Charlie now.
Okay.
Oh my
Hey, I'll actually
God.
take Henry Cavill. That's badass. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I don't think I want Ezra Miller.
No, you're stuck
Damn.
with Ezra Miller.
Didn't he have like a outrage? Whatever. That's,
Yeah.
You know,
That's a story for another day.
Snyder Cut episode.
Snyder
Yeah.
The
Cut
Snyder
episode.
Files.
Dang. Oh crap. Now I'm like
I'm sorry. that
down
was
the
my
river from what I know. It's fine.
fault. Okay, no, we were talking about how Charlie's wrong and it's not anxiety inducing.
Okay, yes. It's not anxiety inducing. Like if I have a scale and I put like Whiplash and I'm thinking of ending things at like a 10 and then this James is really complimenting Charlie in the chat. And then this movie would probably be like at like a 3 if those movies are like a 10. Like it really isn't anxiety inducing, but and I feel like anything that comes off as anxiety inducing is just you feeling as a viewer like the rawness of what Ruben is going through. Like I really loved there are a lot of full circle like moments in it. Like I specifically was thinking about the difference between Ruben having eating with the deaf community and how it was like very lively, but also like no one's talking, but it feels so like very community oriented and like warm and happy versus
Mhm.
when he's like he has his implants and he's at this party with Lou, and this is like where he wants to be. It's where he well not like wants to be, but this is another like situation where he's with who he wants to be with. Like he's been fighting throughout the entire movie to get good enough to go back to Lou, and the entire party's like horrible, you
Yeah.
know, for him. Like I loved how it was going in and out sound wise between when we were hearing it through his ears and his implants versus like outside of him. And I just love the difference of feeling like he was at peace when he wasn't necessarily like talking or hearing anything versus feeling like very overwhelmed and like ostracized at the party. And I just love there's so many like good moments like
Yeah.
that the movie does really, really well. And I'm very upset that James stole my lack thereof joke. But yeah. In the terms of Oscars, I definitely I wouldn't be mad if it won anything, you know. I think he's up for best leading and then the best picture. I wouldn't be mad if it got best picture, and I wouldn't be mad if he got if Riz Ahmed got leading actor. Of course, I am with Chadwick personally. But again, if it's a person of color, I'm rooting for them. So at the end of the day,
Down with the white
I will
man.
be.
So
Each day I wake up and thank the white man for the sun.
Oh, what have we done, guys? What are we doing?
we thank you, Brown
Guys,
Sugar.
college decisions are coming. You can't do this.
I'm sorry.
Ray Fisher is like, he's just face palming now. He's like, you too.
I know. It's
too.
fine. It too, Brutus.
I want to start out by saying that Sound of Metal got nominated for 6 Oscars.
Yeah.
Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Original Screenplay, Best Supporting Actor, Best Film Editing, and Best Sound. I'm going to say I'd be fine with it getting maybe all of these except for Best Supporting Actor, which I firmly believe should go to either Daniel Kaluuya or Lakeith Stanfield, who
100% agree.
who both got put in Best Supporting Actor for some reason.
The dumbest thing ever. Are you kidding me? Really?
Yeah, don't get me heated because I will
You know
go
what?
on a dissertation.
You know what? Let's move on. But I think, I mean, we could talk about the Best Picture and the Best Actor stuff, but I think the editing in this film is really underrated. I like, it's not something I initially thought about, but looking back, I think this film definitely deserves best editing. It does a lot of things like Charlie was saying, these cuts to Ruben just completely like acting out and his anger, specifically that scene of him destroying the trailer. This film makes really, really good use of smash cuts. Just these harsh cuts from one thing to its polar opposite, and it creates this really cool effect. I think specifically of the very, very beginning of the movie when he's playing at the metal concert, and that just totally harsh cut to the dead quiet trailer where he's sleeping. It's lovely. Or when he's smashing the trailer, and it's just an instant smash cut to him like sitting on the table being like, "It's okay, Lou. We'll get through it. I'm fine. We'll get like, everything's okay." It just creates for this really engaging feeling of tension that we're trying to put this mask on that everything's okay, but there's this like really discordant anger just beneath the surface. So I think the editing really goes a long way in helping show Riz's character. And so I'd like to talk about the editing. What do you guys think?
Sure. So yeah, to piggyback off of you and to also do my best film student impression. Are you guys ready for this?
Mhm.
Yes.
It's not about what the film is doing. It's about what it's not doing. Think about smash cuts here, folks. Yeah, I know. It should send chills up your
You
spine.
sound like a jazz fan. It's about the notes they're not playing.
Oh, every other note. Yeah.
Jesus.
I saw legitimately, I watched a video today about a jazz musician who played one note for a solo by Adam Neely or Andrew Neely. I forget his first name.
Adam.
Very great channel. Adam. Yeah. It was a great video. And one of the comments on the solo where it was just all one note was, it's about all the notes he's not playing. That's where the real artistry comes in. But same point, more legitimacy for Sound of Metal. Because as I said prior, when you take these two smash cuts and they're so drastically different, there's a lot of implied story in there. So I think that even though this movie is a very slick 2 hours, I will say very great pacing for this movie.
Mm-hmm.
It has a lot of just power and story packed into it because of these moments. It feels like you've gone on more of a journey with Riz Ahmed and the rest of the cast than was actually shown in the movie because of these like jumps in time between these smash cuts. And it shows a lot of the important parts of these emotional scenes rather than the gradual downfalls and climbs that you see in a lot of other movies where you'll have like a scene go on for 8 minutes when it really doesn't have to. Or anime fights that last 17 episodes or whatever. But this movie understands the points that you need to emphasize, and it emphasizes them. Martin Scorsese or whoever the heck did Irishman, I think it was Martin Scorsese, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Take notes, man. You don't need to, or same with Snyder, you don't need to do 4 hours. All right, I'll tell you that right now. I haven't started Justice League. I do not want to. The movie's too long and it should look at Sound of Metal. I'm sorry,
How was it?
Kasey.
It was good. I feel like it's definitely better than the first one, but it didn't have to be 4 hours.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
really didn't have to be 4 hours.
Exactly. And
I
this
want
movie
to point
knows
out,
that.
Charlie, that you didn't even say I watched Snyder Cut. You say I haven't started the Snyder Cut.
Yeah.
Because the
It's a
thought of
jury.
watching this in one part is too much.
Well, that's what everybody says. Like, have you
It
met
is,
somebody
I
who's
didn't.
watched it in one part?
I
No.
didn't watch it in one part.
No.
There's a built-in intermission for those who see it in
Wait.
theaters.
Really?
Yes.
That's
Mm.
kinda
At like
cool.
part like 4, there's 7 parts, well 6, and then the epilogue. Yeah.
Yo, they do that in Seven Samurai. There's an intermission in Seven Samurai too. I think that's so cool. I think that's neat.
It makes it feel more like a show.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think wasn't there for Les Mis? Did Les Mis do one?
Probably. I don't know.
Yeah, because
All I
that
know
was
is that
really
Kurosawa gets a pass and Snyder does not.
Fair.
But yeah, back to Sound of Metal. Lots of implied story, lots of great stuff there. And yeah, I think that's my whole point. It does really deserve editing. I think especially sound editing. Like,
Yeah, it did get
Yeah.
nominated for sound, which I think is not even a question. What are the other
Easiest
noms
win.
for best sound? Soul, Sound of Metal, Mank, Greyhound. Nah, not even a competition to me. Give
yeah,
it to Sound
of
of Metal.
Metal. Yeah,
Get
legit.
out of here.
Get him out of here.
Is Greyhound the one where Tom Hanks is on a submarine?
I don't know.
We'll never know. We'll never know. Kasey, what do you think about the editing?
Yes. I okay.
What'd you
Be
think?
honest with us.
Yes.
No,
Be
I'm
honest.
pulling my thoughts together. I really thought I was just gonna go straight into it, but I think you guys pretty much like covered everything. Like I love the I just love the way that it plays with the going in and out of what he can actually hear.
Yes.
And like it's just so good. It was just so satisfying to me. And I think especially I love the scene where he's with the kid on the slide. And
Oh,
it's
that
like
was great.
and I was like, "Oh, yes, this is what I came for." And it wasn't even because I get very easily emotional in movies because it's just beautiful.
Mhm.
But it just felt so like it was like a relief, you know? And like yes, because I feel like that the editing just really aids the story, you know?
Yeah.
Like if it was horrible editing, if it was Tenet level editing, this movie would not be getting like any attention, but because it's so good,
Yeah.
it's just
I hear
I've
you.
never seen a movie like this before, and I feel like it really just everything works for it, I think.
I think
Mhm.
Charlie used the right word. I think he said clean. And I think that's the right word
Yes.
for this movie because there are some films that like really go over the top with like creativity and geez, Harley Davidson driving outside my house. There are some films that really go out like over the top with creating the most intricate whatever story they can, like, Tenet or The Irishman or any of these super convoluted plots. And that's what Sound of Metal is not. It's a very straightforward plot. I mean, the cast is super small, but it's very tight. It's very clean. Like, there's no crazy sets or insane, like, high profile actor cameos or like it's clean, it's tight, and it tells its story so efficiently. And
Yeah.
I think that deserves commendation. Someone said that you don't notice like you only notice editing if it's bad. It's like it's something that
I said that quote to you.
well, who said it? Who were you quoting when you said it?
Well, I don't know, so let's attribute it to me because it's smart sounding.
Charlie Heatherly once said you only notice editing if it's bad.
There
The
we
great
go.
pro-
And when he
Prophet.
said that, he was right.
Thank you. Thank you. Very kind of you. But yeah, like as an editor, James, you would know. That's your whole job is to make it seem seamless and cool and clean cut and to efficiently communicate information to the viewer. And that's what this movie does, I think, on so many different levels.
Mhm.
But is there anything else that anyone wants to talk about with sound design and editing? Because I have a lot to talk about the social stuff in this movie, a lot of the deaf
For
community
sure.
stuff.
Yeah, I guess I just want to say like I really appreciate how much this movie commits to point of view with their sound design. I think that's a really really
Mm.
smart thing that it does. Like I have a feeling that other films trying to tell this sort of story would break the proverbial ice, like they would let us see it from a quote unquote regular person's point of view. Um, but I really like that this film kind of just hangs you out to dry along with Ruben. Like it's very sink or swim. You have to figure it out with him. In the scenes where you're in Ruben's point of view and you can't hear anything, um, it does a really good job of showing his progression as a deaf person. I like a certain ways into the movie, you still can't hear. Like the audience hasn't magically gotten their hearing back in these scenes, but we're learning how to communicate with Ruben. And so you start to sort of just like you start to just get it, Like you don't miss dialogue after a certain point in this film. And I think that's so incredible. And when you get it back with the cochlear implant sounds in the third act, it's like you're just as disillusioned and disgusted as Ruben is. I think this film uses sound design to put you in the protagonist's shoes, and it's just so flawlessly done. Um, is Sound of Metal meant to be a Sound of Music reference? By the way, I can't.
Oh.
I have not been able to sleep until I figure out this title. Now, obviously, Sound of Metal, like he can't hear and he plays metal music. I was maybe thinking that Sound of Metal has something to do with like how gross and digital and metallic everything sounds with the implants in. Like it's like the sound of metal, but that's a reach,
No, that was my exact
Mm,
take. I think that there's
yeah.
two sounds of metal. It's the sound of the drums and him hitting the cymbals, and it's the metallic screech of that implant that he has, making the entire world sound horrible. The same sound of metal has both a good side to it and a bad side to it, and he has to learn how to negotiate that.
Big
Yeah.
thank you, Charlie.
Period.
Mm.
I think I related the title like to the scene with the kid on the slide because like it's the literal sound of metal. And I was like, "Oh,"
Mm.
and it was like he had to leave the room for whatever like the hip hop performance. And I was like, that totally makes sense because it's like at a low enough
Frequency,
velocity is not the
frequency.
frequency, thank you. Yeah, a low enough frequency that he can still, like, hear it, and he's kind of doing the whole, like, drumming thing that he hasn't done in months, and I feel like that's kinda, like, the start of him building like, he hasn't fully reached his, character development climax because he's still in, like, the thick of trying to get, um, all of his stuff together for the implants, but I just felt like that was like a very pivotal moment that I was like, "Oh, maybe it relates to that." But that what you guys said makes a lot of sense as well.
I think you're definitely. I mean, I wouldn't discredit what you said at all. I mean, I think that's just as valid. There's tons of sounds of metal in this movie. Um, you said something about the like him working towards getting the implants, and that's made me think about how in the beginning of the film getting the implants is like presented as the goal, like that's what we're trying to do in this movie. um but seeing him learn how to be deaf, to use the movie's language, throughout the second act was so like nice and endearing that totally forgot about the implants. And so when he goes back and
Mm.
finally gets them, I was kind of sad along with Joe. I was like, oh, he hasn't quite learned his lesson yet. His hero's journey's not done.
Yeah.
Interesting, because like you actually just put into words exactly what I was thinking. I saw this as like my sort of slice of life movie where there's tons of action and personal character growth. Unlike Minari for me, which felt a bit more slower paced. And I think that I relate to, or at least understand what's going on in Sound of Metal a bit more than what's going on in Minari. And
Mm.
I think that the lack of any central goal is very key to a lot of these slice of life movies, or the lack of like a very defined central goal. Like in Minari, it's oh, we need to get the farm up and running. In this, it's I guess the implants. But in both, that goal takes a back seat in almost every single scene for something else to happen. So I think you're entirely right in saying that this movie veers off in a direction that shouldn't work with the story, but you're so just enraptured with and just taken away with that you completely vibe with it and you completely forget what the whole point of the movie is. And then when it hits you again, that sound of metal of those hearing aids is all the more sharper and disjointed because of the fact that you weren't expecting it. You didn't think he'd go back.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's like it's frustrating. Joe says in the movie that like he seems like an addict when he talks about, the money for the implants. It's like seeing this guy who at the beginning his goal is so like result based, like I need
Mhm.
to fix this and I need to get the implants and fix this and go back to what I was doing before. And then to see him kind of move past that and learn how to live in the present with what he has is is so nice. And then when you see him sort of fall back into those old destructive habits from the beginning, it's really sad as a viewer. Like
Yeah.
the low point for the hero in this movie hit so much harder for me than most other films, because a lot of times it's just like bad guy or like good guy hits a wall, sucks, but it's all going to be fine. But in this it's like it hits so much more because Ruben made that choice for himself. Like he just didn't, it felt like he was learning his lesson and then he fell back into old habits, and it was just
Yeah.
heartbreaking.
It
Mhm.
really seemed like he didn't trust the process, you know? Like
Mm-mm.
he was very he's characterized as very like fast paced. So obviously like the character development that we see with him taking the time to learn, as James said, like learn how to be deaf. And you think like you're thinking and you're hoping that he's gonna stay and like he's having all these Joe's reaching out to him with all these like opportunities. He's growing in like relationship there. He's growing relationships there. But then he can't do it, and I don't know if it's specifically because it's connected to Lou, who I kind of want to talk about and how their relationship pans out. Because I think that would be interesting, or
Yeah.
because I really think that he, in his reach to get the implants, like it's because he wants to do this thing with Lou and he doesn't
Yeah.
see any kind of any alternative option, like
Yeah.
fully in his mind, and that's kind of why he falls into it. And I think the end of the movie where he's like kind of like Soul, where it's like I got this, it's not what I was expecting, and now I'm gonna actually follow this like advice of just living in like sitting in the silence and all that stuff. I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, I
Hmm.
especially the ending. Gosh, I love.
Mhm.
It's like this movie's not a complete hero's journey, and it's a lot like Minari, I think, in that the ending is not conclusive. Like it's not conclusive in events, but it's conclusive in spirit, Like because that was something I watched this with my family, and that was something that a lot of them were saying is like, well, what about like what happened to Joe? Why doesn't he go back to America? Like, what happens next? But I think like emotionally and from a thematic standpoint, it reached a very solid like it was a very it wasn't that open-ended of an ending to me, It felt like, okay, he realizes, that Joe's school of thought is right, and he's going to learn how to appreciate being deaf. Uh,
Yeah.
Hmm.
and so to me, there wasn't really that much open-endedness to the ending. It felt like pretty clear, like, hey, he learned his lesson and now he can really recover. And I felt the same way with Minari. It felt pretty conclusively like, hey, they faced some trials, they made some wrong decisions, they realized it's wrong, and they're going to try again, you know?
Interesting,
Yeah.
because I have a
Just
completely different
satisfying.
interpretation than you do.
Oh.
Ooh.
In fact, I don't think Joe is right necessarily. Uh,
Oh, we're getting into the discourse now.
well, yeah. To me, I think Joe makes a very good point, and one that should be made, especially with communities like the deaf community, and that's that we shouldn't see these people as people that need to be fixed, right? Or people that need to be changed in some sort of way to be whole again. They're people. They're living life a different way than others because
Mhm.
of a physical, not even condition, just a physical reality that they have, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's Joe's argument is it's like, look, you're not broken. You have a home here. Why don't you stay here and be happy that way? But I think for Ruben, there's a lot of practical considerations that make it the right choice to get this hearing aid. Mainly, he has a girlfriend that he loves. and it would be sort of unreasonable, or it would take a lot of time and a lot of strain on the relationship for him to try and get to and get her to learn sign language and go through that whole process in a different space. Like that's just a lot of commitment and time and stress that both of them would have to deal with, I feel like. And if he also does enjoy music, I mean, he probably wants to at least hear some of it. Or even if we're talking about his girlfriend, hearing his girlfriend's voice, even just, through that distorted metal, probably still sounds better than anything else that he's heard in, or lack thereof, anything else he's experienced in a while. So
Mm.
I think that there's a lot of good things that he can experience using this a cochlear implant, and I think that trying to put him into this box of like, oh, he's learned that Joe was right. He shouldn't feel positive emotions towards this implant. I disagree. I think that it probably did some good stuff for him, and I see the ending as one that makes him appreciate the sound of silence.
Yeah.
And while still understanding that there's lots of good things to hear as well, and he sort of lives at this cross section between these two worlds. And for me, at least, I see him sort of finally reconciling with that, knowing that as a musician he can still enjoy that, but also understanding that as a deaf person he has to be responsible to that community. So that's what I see him sort of like contemplating in the distance, like with him just really blankly realizing and thinking out in his head, like, oh, this is what I think. So I guess in that way, the film is probably pretty open-ended because we came away with such, different interpretations. But that's also mainly what I wanted to talk about with Joe as well.
Yeah. I guess from a completely like real life practical standpoint, it's pretty easy for him to like swap back and forth between, silence and not silence because you just take the, but and I totally see what you're saying. Like he's going to walk the middle road. But I guess to me, how I read the third act of the movie, I'm considering the third act everything post getting the implants because I think that's where that division would come. But to me, everything in the third act of him with the implants sort of was trying to show that like he got what he wanted, but at what cost? Like he got, and that's especially the scene of Lou and her father singing this beautiful piano song. And to Ruben, it's so distorted and ugly sounding. And to me, I read that as like, even though you're trying to fight against fate, you're not going to be able to go back to that old life. And I think that's why he breaks up with Lou. I think the music scene is him realizing that the implants aren't going to solve his problem, and that is why he breaks up with Lou. Like they had good times and it was their relationship and their music career was good. But I think that scene is Ruben sort of saying like, he says, hey, it's okay. Like, it's okay. We had our run, but it has to be over. Like, at least, I don't know. Yeah. I guess I didn't really read it as like him being able to kind of go back and forth. Which is I see your point, but that's just not how I, read it.
No, I think that there's totally two different interpretations. And I think that both of them are valid because of the way that the movie ends. Like, I don't think one of them's right. And I think that that's maybe emulating the way that the deaf community has these sorts of conversations about how they see their lifestyle as. Because, it's not a very clear-cut issue. It's very much, there's a lot of discord over, what the correct interpretation of that is. So
yeah, I don't want to move away from that, though, quite yet. Because, I mean, Kasey, how did you interpret it? Right?
So
Like, I don't want to move away from the ending yet. I think there's more to be talked about here.
No, sure.
Yeah. For the ending's really, really interesting because on one hand, I understand where Joe's coming from because of how he has his community like set up. It's very focused on the acceptance part of being deaf and learning how to be and how to just essentially live that way, like live the way that you were born without any of like the extra like add-ons and stuff like that. So I understand where he's coming from, where when he's talking to Ruben about like about how it's going to essentially like affect how the children can see themselves as like, oh, there's a person who is a influence on these children, and then even he is not fully satisfied with living this type of like lifestyle that we're teaching, and that could be very, very confusing and kind of hypocritical and just cause problems. So I can see where he's coming from that point of view, but also I definitely agree with Charlie, where for Ruben getting the implants, like it's really not like it's a big deal, but because of how interchangeable the silence and the hearing is, like it's not like a world moving thing. It's a world changing thing, but it won't like just ruin everything now that he has these implants. Like he can only hear this like screeching metal. And just to touch on the relationship that he has with Lou, I've I've been thinking about it, and I feel like Ruben kind of put himself in this what's it called? Like kind of a protective mode when it came to Lou. So everything, like as I said before, everything that he was kind of doing it for Lou so that they can get back to this life they had together and all that stuff. But when he comes back to Lou, like her appearance is completely changed. She's very much more kind of like assimilated if we look at the implants and just this kind of story of like assimilation or integration.
Yeah, she's
um
back to the French world too. I
yeah.
think it's worth
Mhm.
pointing out.
And so I feel like him feeling all this like this pressure to get back to Lou, because they're definitely, this is a hella codependent relationship.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And we kind of get that, and we get some insight on why Lou is the way that she is. But I feel like he's able to break up with her and leave her because he sees that she's A, doing better, and B, she's supported by her father.
Mm.
Even though she may not, like the throwaway line of after hearing her sing and him being sorry, yeah, her sing and he and him being like, "Oh yeah, that was great." And her being like, "Yeah, but it's just my father's stuff." Like she still doesn't truly want to be there. Like she'd probably prefer to be living in the van doing her like metal stuff still. But that's not like where her evolution is taking her, you know? Like I feel like it's all about growing, and like this movie's very much about growth, and they really handled Lou and Ruben growing apart from each other and growing past each other, because they're both evolving and they're moving in the right direction for the most part, but sometimes you just pass people once you get into like maturity and stuff. And I
Mhm.
feel like it was just handled really, really well, and it's just a really interesting relationship because they really, really cared about each other, but it just didn't work out.
That is super interesting because I think that even within Lou's character, there's so much interpretation as to what her ultimate fate is. Because what you said is entirely true. The fact that she doesn't really want to be in French society, but it seems like it's making her happier because one big line there is that she stopped the self harm. She stopped scratching. If you guys noticed,
Mm,
Hmm.
like at the
yeah.
very start of the movie, you see the marks on her arm. Ruben makes a comment and says, "Oh, you've stopped scratching yourself." She's like, "Oh yeah, I guess." So maybe that is her coming into French society and like subconsciously feeling a lot better about it than this sort of scary life on the road, this period of rebellion, this lack of growing up. And maybe that's what cues Ruben into seeing like, oh, it's time for us to part ways. We have two separate journeys to go on.
Yeah.
But also what was interesting about the scene that James brought up, another point of interpretation, is that James is entirely right. That scene is played so that it's really sad that Ruben can't hear the true beauty of this music. But when they get back to the apartment, he tells Lou, and I think very honestly so, you sounded beautiful. And I
Hmm.
Yeah.
and I think that
Ugh,
that how
so
do you
good.
interpret that? Do you interpret
Yeah,
that
I
as
don't
him
know.
like realize or still enjoying the sound of music even with this, distortion? Or do you see it as like maybe he was lying, maybe he was just trying to make her happy? Like, I don't know. Like, there's so many different ways that you can take this movie, and because of that realization, like you can't deny that this movie is genius for doing that, or at least very competent for doing that.
I guess to answer your question, I still can't shake the idea that the whole third act is about him realizing that no sound is better than the weird, like, bastardized sound he has through the implants, Like, I don't know. For some reason, like, to me, that seemed to be what it was saying. And now that I'm like hearing your guys' takes, I feel you. I don't know.
I'm
I
so
definitely, huh?
I'm so conflicted. I just want
I know.
Yeah.
And I agree with Kasey though about like all the stuff you said about Ruben and Lou. I think seeing Lou in France was very much like a wake up call for Ruben. Like, she's moving on. I need to do the same. Because this whole movie, I think, is about Ruben trying to run backwards to his old life.
Yeah.
While Lou is moving forward. Whether she's doing it, willingly or confidently or not, whatever. But Lou is she's moving on. And we see that like, oh, she's performing solo in Paris while Lou is stuck here, resenting the fact that he's deaf. And it's sad because you start to see Ruben do his own progression. But then he keeps, he kind of rejects it and tries to turn around and chase the past again. So I think the end is him trying, like, stopping that retroactive longing, and moving into the present. Very, very kind of Soul-like. I think this movie has a lot of similarities with Soul in, like, thematically. I think Kasey said that earlier, and she was totally right. But yeah, I don't know. To me, I guess I read it as like a story of learning to let go of the past and like move forward with what you have. But I totally see your guys' interpretations too.
Wow. Guys, this feels like I'm thinking of ending things when we all came up with the different theories. And then we just sort of sat there and we were like, whoa.
Watch this movie.
Yes.
Yeah, really good. I think this is why it is best picture material. If you can have a conversation similar to this with your friends about it, then it's probably really good. I don't know. That is probably the least controversial take that I've said all day.
Yeah, then again, we've also had, if you're just referring to do a podcast about it, we've done podcasts about Face Off and The Kissing Booth too.
Both of which are phenomenal films, except for Kissing Booth 2.
I cannot wait
I apologize for
the Socratic Awards.
That was brutal.
I'm so sorry.
We should do a Socratic Awards. Oh my gosh. Why have we not done that yet?
Staff meeting. I feel like that's a pretty, I don't want to cut us short, guys, but I mean, to me, in the narrative of our podcast, that feels like a really thematic, fitting ending point. I think Charlie, you did a great job.
You did a great job, James. You did a great job, Kasey.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
You did a great job, Ray Fisher.
He's like wiping away a single tear. And you, viewer, did a great job for making it to the end of the episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Socratic Cinema podcast. You make our day. You are the light in our life. You make the sun go round. To quote Charlie, your eyes fill my heart with sunlight.
You have to expose me like that, James?
To quote me, I love you more than you will ever know.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Socratic Cinema podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please follow us on Twitter. We're pushing hard. We're pushing hard on Twitter, guys.
We're desperate.
Please. Cinema Socratic, at Cinema Socratic. You can find it on our website at socraticcinema.com. I don't know what else to try. I'm getting desperate. Just follow us on Twitter and hit the retweet button and give us dopamine, please. You can also find us on Instagram at Socratic_cinema, where we post posts and stories. It's a lot of fun. And you can get some cool interaction on Instagram too, because we do like, what have you been watching recently and stuff like that. It's fun. So follow us on Instagram too while you're at it. Be sure to check out our website at socraticcinema.com. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, like and comment. Let us know what you thought of Sound of Metal down below. go ahead and check out our other great podcasts, especially on those Oscar hot topics for this year, like Judas and the Black Messiah, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom.
Face
I
Off.
almost said Chef.
Minari.
Minari. Really didn't hear much about Devil All the Time.
I think it came out last year.
Yeah.
Oh, dang. It was in that like weird gray period.
Yeah.
Rough. Hate to see it. Anyways, yeah, thank you so much for listening. If you want to support the podcast and help us grow and move on to bigger and better things, you probably heard those. You're hearing those wicked audio transitions in the episodes. You want more? Consider becoming a patron. It's as cheap as you want it to be. So, let me put it that way. Stop me, please. Thank you. It's been another great episode of the Socratic Cinema Podcast, and we'll see you next time. So thanks for listening. We have been Socratic Cinema.
Adios.